Okay, let's see if everything is good. Alright, there we go. So, get this set up. Alright, first and foremost, I'm going to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Yahweh to this world ignorantly calls God. Yahweh Shai to this world ignorantly calls Jesus. Bahashem means in the name, Rakah means spirit, and Kodash means holy. And that's all in the Paleo Hebrew. Also, I'm going to give double honors to the elder bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. Another camp, and we're doing another indoor camp just because, you know, if you've been looking at the news, the the weather that has been, passing through America, mainly the lower part, but like through the mid, Texas going towards the northeast, it's been insane, insane. Which, weather, storm. Let's go into it right now. But yeah, last week, couldn't go out there just because it was way too windy, cold and windy. And now, it's the same thing. It's only even gotten worse. But as you see, winter storm live updates: northeast covered in heavy snow, while ice accumulation leaves 800,000 without power in the south. And as I was speaking in one of my previous videos, going into how Yahweh Shai said that pray that your flight be not in the winter, because when it comes to dealing with the cold, those elements, everything is more difficult. This is Matthew chapter 24 and verse 20. It says, "But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened." So that's what we're seeing. Okay, we're seeing how the days are being shortened, the prophecies are speeding up, and we're starting to see the time of tribulation. We're starting to see Jacob's trouble with the whole thing of ICE, how they're cracking down, going door to door on you Latinos, Negroes, and Native Americans. Okay, that's Jacob's trouble. So we're seeing all this happen, and the point I wanted to get here is pray that this doesn't happen in the winter, because it is way more difficult to move. Okay, to get anything, it's more difficult. Okay, because you got to cover yourself. So imagine, the scriptures talk about how in that day, we shall be as pilgrims. Let's go over there. Second Ezra chapter 16 and verse 40. It says, "Hear, O my people, hear my word, make you ready to thy battle, and in those evils be even as pilgrims upon the earth." Right, so when things really go down 100%, hey, it's gonna be so bad that we're gonna have to be moving, on the fly. Okay, we're gonna have to move on faith, and moving on the fly. Like in these purge movies where something is constantly going on. Okay, it's gonna be even harder if you got to go through all this. So Yahweh Shai said that for a reason, right? Pray that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day, right? Because the Sabbath day, there are certain things we can't do, right? So, "For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be." So we're about to see the worst of the worst, and we're seeing the beginning, right? When you go up in this chapter, Matthew chapter 24 and verse 6, I'll start at verse 3. It says, "And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? And Yahushua answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you, For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Hamashiach, and shall deceive many. And we see that heavy, and that's primarily by the way of, the Roman Catholic Church and all these, Christian denominations out here preaching about the Messiah when, their doctrine has nothing to do with the Bible. Okay, they don't even follow the Bible. But it says, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginnings of sorrows. And one thing that, I'm thinking about as I'm reading this, if the beginning of nation against nation and famine and pestilence, if that's just the beginning, then that means that this world is going to be in a state of, chaos for a while. Okay? It's going to be a build up to that chip. So that's what we're seeing right now. Okay, recently, if you go on the news, okay, outside of this winter storm, if you go on the news, you have another shooting in Minnesota, right, where all those ICE agents are going crazy. Another shooting. So his name was, I believe, Alex Preddy. Let's bring that up real quick and go into it. You can see that a lot of it, I try to search up for, what happened, and, it's not really even coming up instantly. So, Trump's ICE crackdown faces reckoning as outrage amounts over Alex Preddy shooting. President says his administration is reviewing fatal shooting as Republicans and the Democrats criticize ICE surge. And what we're seeing is, when we go to Revelation chapter 2, I believe. Okay, there's a reason they're going this hard. Revelation chapter 2, Revelation chapter 3. No, that's not it. Revelation 12. Right, Revelation chapter 12 and verse 12, it says, Therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. For the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And when it's talking about the devil, it's not talking about, a man with literal, horns. That's something made up. That is not even in the Bible. When it goes into devil, okay, it goes back to the Greek word diabolos, which means, let's see if I can find it, which means prone to slander, slanderous, accusing falsely, a calumniator, a false accuser, a slanderer, metaphorically applied to a man who, by opposing the cause of God, may be said to act the part of the devil or to side with him, right? And that's going into these Edomites, okay? Everything about them is against the Most High. And there's a scripture that says that as the ruler, so are the people. If the ruler is wicked, the people will be wicked, because that is what's promoted. If the ruler is righteous, there will be righteousness in the city, because that is what's promoted. Right? You got to remember that people follow. There's always a leader and a follower. And majority of people in the world are sheep, okay, are followers. So we have a wicked, man, a wicked devil in authority, and that's why you see the wickedness that you see. A woman calls herself a man calls himself a woman. The woman try to be masculine and the men feminine. The woman thinks she could do it all by herself when, it's completely against her nature. You can see how, as we get to the end, more and more men are waking up, and they're realizing that this shit is not it. Right? That's why you saw the whole trend of the passport bros, men going overseas to find wives, because they realize here in America that this shit is not it. Okay? You see that, you see all these, the red pill movement, men realizing that, these women are a bunch of whores and, their nature. So what we're seeing is, slowly but surely, people are waking up. And the biggest wake-up call that the world is going to receive is who the true Israelites are, okay, and that the Most High, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, is a real power. Okay, that's something that, the world is not expecting. The world is not expecting for the Bible, the prophecies of the Bible, to happen. But There's a lot of places I can go. Let's just stay on this point. Revelation 12 and 12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. Right? So these elites, they understand what's going on. Okay, they understand the prophecies to a certain extent, because they know that once the Israelites start waking up, that their kingdom is going to start coming down. And that makes them want to, hurry up things, because they know that Yahweh Shai is going to return. So when we see, the plans, we see how they talked about the 2030 agenda, how by 2030 they want to have all these plans and 15-minute smart cities. We're in the beginning of 2026. That's in 4 years. In 4 years flies real quick. So they're going to start implementing everything they want to do. And their whole game plan is order out of chaos. Okay, they bring the chaos, they bring the destruction, and they bring the solution after that, right? It's also called problem, reaction, solution. So once the people are begging for a solution, from the problem, they'll give up their morals. They'll give up anything that they stand to in order to survive, right? They'll willingly accept the chip if they haven't ate for a month, if they haven't drank for a month. Right, so pressure is going to be applied, from above and from below to get you people to act on what they want you to do. And the thing about that is that the elect are going to be unfazed, right? When we were reading Matthew chapter 24, it talked about how, the day shall be shortened, but for the elect's sake, how the elect weren't going to be touched. So, this is the most important thing that we have, and the most important thing is the fear of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Let's get into the scriptures. Keep going. Before I start, going on a righteous rant, as the brother says. Let's read a little bit of this. And it says, Donald Trump's efforts to deploy militarized immigration agents in U.S. cities may finally be reaching a reckoning as he faces widespread opposition across the U.S., dissenting lawmakers in his own party, and impending court rulings after the fatal shooting of Alex Preddy by federal officers in Minneapolis, right? So the other day they shot that woman in the face, right? And that caused something, and now they shot another person. So what are we saying? We're saying that the devil is coming down with great wrath. Okay, and whether this is a synthetic event, or it's an organic event, the elites always use everything for their own advantage. And it's crazy that a lot of people see that, ultimately Trump, what he wants to do is bring the Insurrection Act so he can deploy, military troops on the ground and have more control, and even going to the extent of declaring martial law so he can stay as president, right? People can see these things, but what I always bring out about that is they can see these things, but they don't understand who is the one doing it, right? They don't understand, they don't have a solution, and they don't understand where does this really come from. The solution is faith in Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, and this comes from the Lord. These are the prophecies of the Bible. So let's go into, something that I saw earlier today. This guy, a Bad Bunny, is going to dress as a woman at the Super Bowl. Look at this right here. So this is a complete abomination, and this shows you ultimately, and he says something along the lines of, I'm going to go to the Super Bowl in a dress, and if you don't like it, don't watch it. Right here. I'm wearing the dress. If that bothers you, don't watch. And what do you see right here? You see that these are a bunch of sellouts. And this right here, okay, so many scriptures come to mind. Let me pull them up before I go on a tangent. Revelation 11. That Revelation 11 hits the point. Let's also go to Jeremiah 51, I believe. And this seems to be a reoccurring verse, a reoccurring scripture that I go to, but hey, it's happening more and more. So look at this. This whole one eye thing, it goes back to the elites. It goes back to showing homage that you're controlled by the elites, and it's all a plan. And these celebrities are just their puppets. Okay, they are the so-called role models for the younger generation to follow, and for that younger generation to be degenerated, to be led astray from the Most High. So this right here, okay, if you search up one eye covered celebrities, you'll find that this is not new. Okay, this is not new. Every single one of those celebrities, when you look at it, they're all doing the same thing. Right, this is with the, let me see if he actually did it there. The three, right? Yeah, you see three fingers, and then the eye. Let me actually pull that up bigger. But you can't really. So you can see three fingers in the eye, covering one eye. It all goes back to the Illuminati, okay? Which is just the elites. And it goes into the all-seeing eye. And like I said, they make them do this, right? The Illuminati hidden eye, called the right eye of Lucifer, or the all-seeing eye. The sign is made by hitting one of the eyes and represents the eye of Horus, right? Because as it says in Revelation 11, that this place is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. And you can see how even in that picture, he has that Egyptian, shit on. You could just tell, this looks Egyptian as hell, with the eye, and literally just like that. So let's get the scripture. Revelation chapter 11 and verse 8. It says, "And their dead bodies, going into the spiritually dead Israelites, shall lie in the street of the great city called Babylon in the scriptures, but it's talking about America, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt." Right? So this place resembles Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, those wicked cities, which when you read about what was happening, these angels were trying to rape. Okay, no, not Salakia. That's Satan right there. The men of Sodom and Gomorrah were trying to rape Lot and the angels. Okay, so that was the point. It was that, that's what they were on, is momoyality, homosexuality, cross-dressing. All those are abominations. But this place has that spirit. That's why you see where, the Super Bowl being one of the most watched events in the world. Okay, this is the halftime show. Okay. Bad Bunny's gender-bending style isn't just fashion, it's a protest. And it's a complete abomination to even look at that, man. That's disgusting, but this is what he's gonna do. Let's actually get the law on that. Man wear woman dress. Deuteronomy 22 and 5. Deuteronomy chapter 22 and verse 5, it says, "The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, and neither shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all that do so are abomination unto Yahweh thy power." Alright, so this is an abomination. Okay, the same way a woman wearing what a man wears is an abomination. But the world looks at this as normal. Okay, they don't have a problem with, a man being a woman and a woman being a man, because that's all they have been taught since a little kid. And it's because the wicked are in authority. So, complete abomination. But let's keep on. Revelation 11. It says this place is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. And that's where you can see that Egyptian, symbolism of the eye. Or was it? That symbolism of the eye. Right here. Spiritually Sodom and Egypt. Okay. So, hey, Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai, like he said, hey, before these things spring out, I'll tell you of them. Let's get that. Before spring, I'll tell you. Isaiah 42 and 9. It says, "Behold, the former things are come to pass, and new things do I declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them." Right? So, before any of this happened, it was written in that book that this was going to take place, that there was going to be a great city that controlled the entire earth, that wickedness was pushed there, and that it was going to influence the entire world. And that's what we're seeing. So, let's go into Jeremiah 51. I pulled this up also, and I'll start at verse 7. it says, I'll start at verse 6. It says, "Flee out of the midst of Babylon, and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity, for this is the time of Yahweh's vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense." Right? So you got to flee this place. And that doesn't mean physically leaving. Okay? It means spiritually, you got to depart. Okay? You got to disconnect from this world because this place is polluted. Okay? As it says in Micah chapter 2 and verse 10, it says, "Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest. Because it is polluted, it shall destroy you, even with the sword destruction." Right? So you got to arise out of this place. Okay? Your whole, life, your whole dependence and your goals, it shouldn't be tied to this place. It should be focused on the Lord. How can I get closer to the Lord? Because that's what's going to deliver you. Okay? Not your money, your car, your woman. Okay, your faith in Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushua, your fear, your obedience in following the scriptures and having faith in Him, that's what's going to deliver you. When you read Zephaniah chapter 1 and verse 18, I'll start at verse 14. It says, "The great day of Yahweh is near, it is near and hasteth greatly, even the voice of the day of Yahweh, the mighty man shall cry there bitterly." And I always think about this verse. Is going into the day of the Lord. What we've been speaking about, Jacob's trouble, a time like never before seen. And it's near. Okay, we're seeing the signs of it. Now, the key here is, it says that the mighty man, okay, is going to cry bitterly. So, when you go into the mighty men of Babylon, okay, the strong, the brave, the champions, those that excel, okay, the valiant, okay, the only real people that fit those descriptions, I always think of David Goggins because he has the whole, image built around him. He is, that type of talking about you got to do it even if you don't like it. And the man has shown that, your mind, if you put it on something, can go great lengths. That's what he's shown. But even with that, if you don't have Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai, the Lord is going to make it where you bug out. And that's what, these people that talk about discipline and this and that, that's what they don't understand, is that if the Lord wants you to bug out, to just go crazy, you will go crazy, and there's nothing you could do about it because we are not the ones in control. So in that day, even David Goggins, with all his willpower and discipline, he's going to be crying because he's not going to have answers. Right? That's what it goes back to, is answers. You're going to need a solution to survive. And let's keep reading. That day is a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress, a day of wasteness and desolation, a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, a day of the trumpet and alarm against the fenced cities and against the high towers. And I will bring distress upon men, that they shall walk like blind men, because they have sinned against Yahweh, and their blood shall be poured out as dust, and their flesh as the dung. Right? So when it comes to, like I said, you being out here, it's the Lord that controls everything. And He's going to make it where these mighty men, they are going to be walking blind because they were wicked. Sure, there were successes in the world, but they were still wicked. And the Most High is going to bring nasty judgments. As it says, it's going to be a day where the mighty man cries bitterly. That's one of those cries where, you can't even get your breath. You just... stomach all hurting. So let's go into that word distress. We're still going. Distress. To bind, be narrow, be in distress, make narrow, cause distress, besiege, be strained, be bound. To bind, to tie up, to make narrow, cause distress, press hard upon, to show hostility toward, to be shut up. Let's put it in the Google. It says extreme anxiety, sorrow, or pain. And that's what's coming. Okay, that's what's coming to the world, is extreme anxiety, sorrow, or pain. Right? People worrying about the future because they're not going to have answers. That's all it goes back to, is they're not going to have answers. But the elect will. Okay, in that day, the elect will have faith in Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai. we're going to understand that this is all prophetic, that the Lord is fully in control, and that he spoke about how the elect will be taken care of in that day if they have faith. And that's going to be enough because they have faith. They have that full belief. Right? That's why it says that in Isaiah 33:6 that wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times, and that the fear of the Lord is his treasure. Right? So it's very important to abide in that fear. Right? Understand that, okay, what do I have to do? What do I have to do correctly? Right? That is applying wisdom. What do I have to do correctly? Because I know if I don't, this is going to happen to me. Right? That is the fear of the Lord, is the beginning of wisdom, explained, in English. What am I going to do? Because I know if what do I have to do right? Because I know if I don't, this is going to happen to me. There are consequences for our actions, and soon this world will realize that. Verse 18, neither their silver nor their gold shall be able, let me see, give me a second. Put my camera a little bit more up. Right, so it says, neither their silver nor their gold shall be able to deliver them in the day of Yahweh's wrath, but the whole land shall be devoured by the fire of his jealousy, for he shall make even a speedy riddance of all of them that dwell in the land. Right, so your money, right, your silver, your gold, your money isn't going to save you from the day of the Lord. It's not going to save you from a nuclear destruction. Okay, so what is going to save you? Faith and works. Okay, faith in Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua Ba'ashem Rokakodash. Because what's coming is, it says that the whole land shall be devoured by the fire. And it's going to be a speedy riddance. Right, because that fire is going to come from those nukes, and it's going to wipe this place fast. When you go into Revelation chapter 18, let's close some tabs. Actually, I didn't even finish my point there. We got that. When you go into Revelation 18, okay, it goes into talking about Babylon the Great, America. And I'll start at verse 15. It says, the merchants of these things which were made rich by her shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. Right, so going into how, all these other nations, the merchants, people in ships, they got rich from America, because that's also spoken. It's spoken about how, the merchants of this world, okay, the other nations have gotten rich because of America. And the reason why is because everything is imported. Okay, here it is, these Chinese can make something for, let's say, 10 cents, with their, whole child, workforce. And they'll make something over there for 10 cents, and they'll come over here to America and sell it for $100. Right? Nike shoes. Like, if you search up how much does it cost to make a Nike shoe in China. Right, so it generally costs roughly $15 to $25 to produce a pair of Nike shoes in Chinese factories. The factory fee on board covers material, labor, and overhead, representing only a small fraction of the final retail price, which often exceeds $100 after shipping duties, marketing, and retail markup. Right, so even when you go into like Reddit, okay, it talks about how, let me see, I saw it real quick there. Right, the average worker in a Nike factory in China makes around $1.67 per hour, $400 a month. It costs Nike around $16.67 to manufacture a pair of shoes. So make it for $16 and sell it for $100. That's why it says in verse 15 that the merchants of these things were made rich by her. Okay, but they're gonna be standing afar off in those ships, watching the destruction of this place, and saying, alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, for in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. And every shipmaster and all the company and ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea, by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour is she made desolate. Right, so this place, as we read in Zephaniah 1, is going to be a speedy riddance. This place is going to go down in 1 hour. Okay, and the reason why is those missiles. When you search up how long does it take for a ICBM to reach the US from Russia, what does it say? An intercontinental ballistic missile from Russia can reach the US in roughly 15 to 30 minutes, with land-based missiles taking closer to 30 minutes and submarine-launched missiles potentially striking in as little as 10 to 15 minutes. So that's how they're going to be able to get it done in 1 hour. And you can see how, this beautiful Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai has opened up the understanding, of his men, because we're seeing how, everything ties together perfectly. We're seeing it. It's beautiful to even search this up and understand the science and how, the Lord is, far out. Which, that's something you got to understand is that, the Lord, if you believe in him, if you're doing his will, okay, no matter what you're going through, no matter how shitty it is, the Lord is far out. Okay, he plans in ways that we can't possibly plan. And if you believe in him, he's always going to act in your best interest. So whatever you're going through, it might seem like hell. It might feel like, damn, the Lord has abandoned me, but he hasn't. Okay, he is far out. He has a long-term plan, and it's for your benefit. Just stay strong, stay locked in, because that's what the Lord requires is endurance. Okay, faith. In those times where you're like, damn, Lord, are you really here? That's when, you gotta have that faith. That's when it matters, is when the trial is there. So have faith in Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai at all times, because these prophecies are proof that he controls everything. Like I said, before there is an America, before there's nuclear missiles, it was already written that there's going to be a city that was going to be destroyed in that matter. So the Lord is real, the Lord is in control, and we're seeing the signs. Okay, going back to the whole Trump ICE crackdown, okay, we're seeing the signs, which let's actually go a little bit deeper into that. So how did Alex Preddy get shot? So 6 hours ago, encrypted chats reveal protesters tracked ICE before Alex Preddy's death in Minnesota. So let's see, reviewing everything. Right, J.D. Vance said this level of engineered chaos is unique to Minneapolis. It is the direct consequence of far-left agitators working with local authorities. Right, so J.D. Vance, vice president of Donald Trump, saying that, oh no, it's the people that are causing everything, that they are the ones that are the problem. And ultimately what this is leading to is civil war, which that is spoken about in the scriptures, how, okay, there will be Americans against Americans. Okay, when you go to Isaiah chapter 19 and verse 1, it says, the burden of Egypt, which, like we read in Revelation 11 and verse 8, that America is spiritually called Egypt. So this is a real prophecy against America and not talking about ancient Egypt. Okay, this is a future prophecy of what we're seeing. It says, the burden of Egypt, behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud, and shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it. Right, and that's talking about a Yahweh Shai's second return. The reason is because in Acts, the first chapter, it talked about how, he came down on a cloud. And it talked about how he left in the cloud. And the angels there talking to the disciples says, why are you marveling? Hey, the same way he left is the same way he's coming back. Right, so this is talking about Yahweh Shai's return and him coming back to judge this place. So it says, the heart of Egypt shall be moved, shall melt in the midst of it. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight every one against his brother, and every one against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. And we're seeing that. We're seeing the buildup of American against American. Okay? Families fighting. Okay? Here it is. Yahweh Shah said that, your foes shall be they of your own household. Right? A man's foes shall be they of their own household. A prophet is without honor in his city. So another big trial is that, you might not want to accept is that your family is going to come against you. Right? Once shit gets hard and, they start putting incentives out there to report, people that believe in this or that, your family is going to sell you out. Okay? If they tell them, yeah, for 100 racks, 500 racks, just tell us where he is. They will sell you out because they don't stand for anything. Okay? And Yahweh Shai said it clearly. If they are not with us, they are against us. He told us clearly how, hey, don't hang around with unbelievers. Right? What fellowship has righteousness with darkness? Light with dark, unrighteousness with righteousness. What fellowship is there? It says in Amos, can two walk together unless they be agreed? So the answer is no. Okay? If you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. And these people will fall for anything because they don't stand for Yahweh B'Hashem Yahweh Shai. That's why one of the most beautiful things really is the brotherhood. And you can see it with, brothers out there in bigger cities where, they got each other. And it's one of the most beautiful things because you understand that you understand this man's mindset. You understand what he stands for. And you know that if he's focused on the Lord, he's not going to commit adultery on you. He's not going to steal from you. He's not going to lie to you. That's somebody you can actually trust. But, all that is lost then. Like it says, brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor, city against city, kingdom against kingdom. And the spirit of Egypt shall fail in the midst thereof, and I will destroy the counsel thereof, and they shall seek to the idols, and to the charmers, and to them that have familiar spirits, and to the wizards. Right? So, the spirit of America, the spirit of this place can't go down, and everything is going to be okay, and we're prosperous, and we're the best. Right? When you go to Revelation 18, it tells you that's the mindset. Right? Revelation 18 and verse 7, it says, how much she hath glorified herself, and lived deliciously. So much torment and sorrow will give her, for she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Right? So who is the she here? It's going into the great whore. Okay, Babylon the Great, America. They have the mentality of living deliciously, and I'm a queen, I'm never gonna see death, we're the best, this place is never going down. But guess what? Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is Yahweh, God, who judgeth her. So it is the Lord who is doing this once again. He is the one that is making all these ICE, attacks and protests and things go on, and Trump do this and that. He is the one doing it. So just focus on him, man. Focus on him. Cut the distractions. Get right. Just focus on him. Whatever's happening, focus on him. Understand that it's for your betterment. It's part of your walk. And you got to go through it. So, Isaiah 19, and the spirit of Egypt, America, shall fail in the midst thereof. Right? People are going to lose hope. And I will destroy the counsel thereof. And actually, when I say people are going to lose hope, I remember seeing a clip, and this woman was talking about how this is like a bad dream because I'm trying to get on my feet, and just bad things keep happening over and over and over again. Nothing is getting better. And that's going to be the mentality for a lot of people. That's going to be the reality, is they're going to say, damn, this is a terrible dream. When are things ever going to get better? And they're going to have the mentality of, nah, it's going to get better. They're going to have that mentality for a little bit, and then it gets worse. It's still going to get good. It gets worse. It gets worse and worse and worse. And it's going to get worse continually, more and more and more and more and more, and to a point that nobody's ever seen. That's why people are going to bug out, and that spirit of, America is going to fail. Because they're going to say, damn, this shit is not going to come back. It's only getting worse. So that's why it says, and I will destroy the counsel thereof, and they shall seek to the idols and to the charmers and to them that have familiar spirits and to the wizards. Right? So once everybody's logic and the carnal way of you thinking of I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that and now let's go over here, once all that fails, people are gonna then realize, oh, I gotta go the spiritual route. And they're gonna focus on, all this witchcraft and getting answers from people that can communicate with dead spirits. But the thing about that is that the Lord is in control of the left hand side also. And those spirits are not meant to tell you the right thing, they're meant to deceive you. So we can see how, ultimately, you can see now, with everything I said, why it says in Isaiah 19, when you scroll down, I believe, knows now it's a different chapter, but it talks about how in that day I will make a man worth more than fine gold. And it's talking about a man that believes in Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. Right? We can see it now. We can see the reason now is because these people are not going to have answers. But the elect, a man of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, is going to have all the answers. Is going to know exactly what to do, and is going to be delivered from situation to situation to situation to situation. It's going to get to a point where people around you are going to say, now the Lord has to be dealing with him. Now he must know something I don't know, because how is he still alive? How does he look healthy? So they call Allah Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua Ba'ashim Rakakwadash, because he still got the spirit on me. He got the spirit on brothers out there to do the work, and Lord willing, as King David said, hey, cast not thy Holy Spirit off of me. May the Lord keep me, using me as a servant to keep doing what I got to do, because I keep saying it over and over again, this is the most precious thing, in the universe, is this spirit. But verse 4, it says, and the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith Yahweh, the Lord of hosts. Right? So the Americans, he is going to give into the hand of a cruel lord and a fierce king. And we believe that, to be Donald J. Trump, DJ Trump, because out of all the presidents, nobody has ever moved the way he moves. Okay? With so much, just, literally pulling out that sword, his blessing. Nobody's ever done it. And you can see how, recently he talked about in, I believe it was the World Economic Forum. Saw this on the news. He talked about how sometimes a dictator is needed. Right. Look at this. Trump, at the World Economic Forum, he said, we had a good speech. We got great reviews. I can't believe it. We got good reviews on that speech. Trump said on Wednesday. Usually they say he's a horrible dictator type person. I'm a dictator, he continued. But sometimes you need a dictator. And that's funny because, that shows you clearly his mindset. Where he'll go all in to do whatever he wants to do. He'll go all in to accomplish the plans of the elites. And what is a dictator? Is a ruler with absolute unchecked power over a state, typically maintaining control through force, propaganda, and suppression of civil liberties. And we can see he's done that to a certain extent. Right, going and getting Maduro from Venezuela, kidnapping him without going through Congress. That's showing you that he has that power over the state, and he does exactly what he wants them, what the elites want him to do. So that shows you, going back to Isaiah 19, that cruel Lord, that fierce king that, the Most High has put up. And another thing I saw another brother speaking about is how, the Lord is so far out that, ever since Trump was young, you search it up, Trump young, he was talking about tariffs. So since a young boy, or young man, Trump in the 1980s, 1980s, he was talking about tariffs, and tariffs are the plan, and we have to push tariffs. But why was that? The reason is the Most High planted that idea, that thought, that obsession in his mind, so that 40 years later, he can fulfill, his idea and ultimately fulfill the prophecies. It's insane. And where you can see it, literally a video here of him talking about it. So all that's happening right now, can happen. So, hey, the Lord is fully in control, and it's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. But let's go to Ezekiel chapter 35. I had Ezekiel 35 lined up. So we'll go into this chapter, break it down. So Ezekiel chapter 35 and verse 1. Give me a second. It says, Moreover, the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir, and prophesy against it. Now, what is Mount Seir? Well, Mount Seir was the main habitation of the Edomites, right? Mount Seir is a rugged mountainous region located east of the Arabah Valley, stretching from the Dead Sea to the Gulf of Aqaba. It is primarily known as the ancestral land of Esau and his descendants, right? So this is talking about Esau, okay? When it says set your face against Mount Seir, it's talking about against the Edomites, not the actual landmass. It says, and prophesy against it, and say unto it, Thus saith Yahweh, Behold, O Mount Seir, I am against thee, and I will stretch out mine hand against thee, and I will make thee most desolate. And Mount Seir being the main habitation of the Edomites, okay, the main habitation of the Edomites today is America. So this is a future prophecy about America, how he's going to make this place desolate, destroy it. I will lay thy cities waste, and thou shalt be desolate, and thou shalt know that I am Yahweh. Because thou hast had a perpetual hatred, and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword, in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. Right, so all the wickedness that they did to us, right, beating Jake, Negroes in the plantations, and all that history of slavery in America, they have to pay for that. Verse 6, Therefore as I live, saith Yahweh, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. Thus will I make Mount Seir most desolate, and cut off from it him that passeth out, and him that returneth. And I will fill his mountains with the slain men, and in thy valleys, and in thy hills, and in all thy rivers shall they fall that are slain by the sword. I will make thee perpetual desolations, and thy cities shall not return, and ye shall know that I am Yahweh. Okay, so he's going to destroy these Edomites fully. Okay, and their cities are not going to return because the Lord is going to get rid of all the Edomites. Okay, it's called genocide. If you don't know, just get it on Google. Genocide is the deliberate systemic destruction, physical, biological, or cultural, of a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. Right, so fully getting rid of a specific group. That is what the Lord is going to do. And it's in the Bible. Okay, Edom will be humbled. We'll go to Obadiah chapter 1, and I'll actually start at verse 2. I'll start at verse 1 just to break it down. It says, The vision of Obadiah, thus saith Yahweh concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from Yahweh, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen, thou art greatly despised. And we're seeing that right now. We're seeing how every single day, the more America runs on wickedness, that the world is looking down on this place, because they realize that this place is not moving correctly. This place is selfish, prideful, and if they follow the ways of America, they will be destroyed. So this place is despised. Right? You go into that word despised, it means feel contempt or a deep repugnance for, right? Hate. Okay, contempt. Let's see that word. The feeling that a person or a thing is beneath consideration, worthless, or deserving scorn. Right? So people don't even want to consider America because this place does whatever it wants to do. Right? What's the point of talking with them? Because we know they're gonna do whatever they want to do regardless. And you see this, whole thing with Trump and NATO. Okay, which this is the prophecy being fulfilled in Revelation, the 17th chapter. Right, Trump's NATO warning pushes Europe to face the cost of defending itself. Right, so what is that going into? Let's read. Gotta get rid of the ad block a second. right? So Europe needs to know how to defend itself, he said, arguing that the continent still isn't ready on its own without U.S. backing, right? Because Donald Trump is talking about leaving NATO. President Donald Trump has openly challenged the assumption, repeatedly warning NATO allies that U.S. protection should not be taken for granted, and insisting the U.S. needed to take Greenland from Denmark. Before he rolled out the use of force to wrest control of the island, European officials had worried about a military dust-up between Western powers would mean the end of NATO. And we're seeing the division. We're seeing how, like we read in Obadiah 1, okay, America is going to be despised, okay, because they are not moving, they are not taking actions to benefit the whole team, the whole Edomite team. They're not taking actions to benefit NATO. So, slowly but surely, like I said, let's go back to Obadiah 1, verse 3. The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Right, so the pride of these Edomites, okay, it says that they dwell in the clefts of the rock. And when you go into, their habitation, you go into Petra, Jordan, this was one of the places where they inhabited, you find that it's exactly that. Here it is, they literally have, their whole, the way they build the columns with the triangle top in the side of a mountain. Thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock. You can't make these scriptures up, man. It said whose habitation is high. Right? What is that talking about? These skyscrapers. Okay, that's something that has never been seen before. Being able to live, miles, I believe, above the surface. So let's actually search it up. What's the tallest skyscraper in the world? How tall is it? The Burj Khalifa. So the Burj Khalifa is 828 meters. 828 meters in miles is half a mile. Half a mile. Yeah, that's literally insane. But that's Esau. That goes as Esau. Habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, right? And though thou set thy nest among the stars, those skyscrapers, thence will I bring thee down, saith Yahweh. Right? So these Edomites exalt themselves as the eagle. And you go into, the coins of the ancient Greeks and Romans and Americans, you find that that's been their eagle since the beginning. Let's see if I can search it up. Edomites eagle. I remember there was right, look at this. Edomite limestone eagle found at Petra, Jordan. Right? Since the beginning, that's been their symbol. Let's see what this goes into. No, it's not it. Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle. Greek, Rome, Right, you look at the Greco-Roman, the coins from the Greeks, you find that they had the eagle on the back. You look at the coins from the Romans, they had the eagle on the back. The coin from America, they have the eagle on the back. Right here, this is what I wanted, this picture. They just changed the name of the company and its location, the Greeks, the Romans, the United States. But they're all still Edomites. Okay? They're all still Edomites. So, let's go to verse 7. It says, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee, and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee, there is none understanding in him. Right, so all the allies of America are going to ultimately turn on this place and destroy it. That's what it's talking about. It says in verse 9, and thy mighty men, O Teman, shall be dismayed, to the end that every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. Right, so every single Edomite is going to be cut off, is going to be destroyed. Why? Verse 10, For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. Right? So what they did to the Israelites, so-called Latinos, Negroes, and Native Americans here in America, they have to pay for that. And the payment will be genocide. Let's jump down to verse 18. It says, "And the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for Yahweh hath spoken it." So the Israelites are going to be the ones that bring judgment on you Edomites, and there's not going to be any remaining, okay? Any remaining, no Edomite at all. And that's what's coming, man. That's what's coming. So we're seeing, the destruction, the downfall of this kingdom. And I'm going to go through now and read 2nd Ezra 15 and 2nd Ezra 16. Go through it and break it down. So 2nd Ezra 15, and I'll start at verse 1. It says, "Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true." And that's what we've been talking about over and over again, how these things are real. You're seeing the signs. You're seeing how it's written over here, and I pull it up over here. "Fear not the imaginations against thee, and let not the incredulity of them trouble thee that speak against thee. For all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness." Alright, so don't get bothered when people come against you, people talk shit. As it says, offenses must come. People are supposed to do that, so don't let it trouble you. Even the Most High told Jeremiah, "Be not dismayed at their looks." People looking down on you, looking at you like you're crazy. Don't let that bother you, because they're doing exactly what they have to do. It says, "Behold, saith Yahweh, I will bring plagues upon the world, the sword, famine, death, and destruction. For wickedness hath exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled." Right? So the sword, meaning people killing each other. Famine, not being able to eat, which that's what's really going to drive people to, rebel. Death and destruction, because wickedness, wickedness is at a level that we've never seen before. So let's jump down to verse. Actually, I'll keep reading. It says, "Therefore saith Yahweh, I will hold my tongue no more as touching their wickedness, which they profanely commit, neither will I suffer them in those things in which they wickedly exercise themselves. Behold, the innocent and righteous blood crieth unto me, and the souls of the just complain continually." Right? So the spirits of the righteous, okay, those that have lived, that have passed away, okay, they go up to the Heavenly Father and give him a report, letting him know, like, hey, this ain't right. You got to do something, Lord. Same as, Abel. When it talks about, the blood of your brother spoke to me, it was going into the spirit. In the spirit realm, Abel was telling him, what happened. It says, "Behold, my people is led as a flock to the slaughter. I will not suffer them now to dwell in the land of Egypt. But I will bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm, and smite Egypt with plagues as before, and will destroy all the land thereof." And like I said, this is talking about America. Okay, and this is talking about the salvation, the second salvation. Last time he saved us out of the land of Egypt, but this time is going to be out of the land of America. It says, "Egypt shall mourn, and the foundation of it shall be smitten with the plague and punishment that God shall bring upon it." It says, "They that till the ground shall mourn, for their seeds shall fail through the blasting and hail, and with the fearful constellation. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein! Woe to the world and them that dwell therein! For the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands." Right, so people fighting each other to survive. And the modern day sword is the gun. It says, "For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power." Right, so what is sedition? A lot of people don't know what that means. Sedition is the incitement of discontent or rebellion against the government, often involving speech or organization aimed at undermining or overthrowing the established authority. Right, which pretty much is civil war. Right, people coming against the government. Right, inciting people to come against the government. And what is the punishment for sedition in U.S. In the U.S., seditious conspiracies to overthrow the government by force carries penalties of fines and up to 20 years in prison, which they're going to bring out, all these laws back and start striking people that come against the system with them. Because what the elites want is full control and for nobody to say anything. And this is why, it talks about the famine of the word, how there will be a time where the prophets do not speak anymore because it will be considered sedition. Okay, it will be considered illegal and dangerous for us to speak these words. Okay, because it wakes up people. Us speaking is waking up the nation of Israel. So it says, "For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power." Right, so people are going to do whatever they want to do, and they're not going to listen to what DJ Trump says or their senator says. It's going to be a survive however you can. "A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able." Right, you try to go to a city, but there's strict military lockdown. Right, you need some type of identification to even, go in. It says, "For because of their pride the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword, and spoil their goods, because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation." Right, so your old homeboy, you known him since a youngin, your neighbor, your cousin, he's gonna break into your house and take what you got because he doesn't have food, and he has to survive. And that's what it's going to get to. People are not going to give a F if you're cousin or not, if you're blood or not. They're not going to care. All they're going to care about is, damn, I'm dying and I have to eat. So once you have no morals, the flesh is a savage. The flesh, is a monster. It'll do whatever it has to do to survive. But let's go now into read some of 2nd Ezra chapter 16 and verse 17. It says, "Woe is me, who will deliver me in those days?" And the answer is Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. "The beginning of sorrows and great mournings, the beginning of famine and great death, the beginning of wars, and the powers shall stand in fear. The beginning of evils, what shall I do when these evils shall come? Behold, famine and plague, tribulation and anguish are sent as scourges for amendment. But for all these things they shall not turn from their wickedness, nor be always mindful of the scourges." Right, so here it is, the Lord is, putting all types of hell on you, but it's made to make you get right. But even then, you look at these things and you're like, I'm going to still be wicked. Here it is, I know I got to do this, I know I got to be right, but I'm going to still be wicked. It says, "Behold, the victuals shall be so good cheap upon earth, that they shall think themselves to be in good case. And even then shall evils grow upon earth, sword, famine, and great confusion." Right, things being cheap right now, people thinking that it's still cold. It's still okay, man. We can still go get a McChicken. You could go still kick it. People think everything's chill, but that evil is gonna grow. And great confusion, man. Literally, Babylon means confusion. So great confusion is gonna be on people, and confusion goes into you don't know what to do. You don't know if to go over here, to go over there, if to eat it or not. You don't know. It says, "For many of them that dwell upon earth shall perish of famine, and the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy." So here it is, you finally break into your cousin's house, you take his, rotten ass hot Cheetos, you eat. But, as you eating, you think you escape the hunger, somebody comes in and blows your head off. The Lord is going to bring some cold judgments, man, and that's why it says that it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living power. And that's why you got to really humble yourself, pray to the Lord to have mercy on you, to forgive you of any of your sins, and, really repent, really get right, because the Lord can take you out, man, and, in ways you can't possibly imagine. It says, "And the dead shall be cast out as dung, and there shall be no man to comfort them, for the earth shall be wasted, and the city shall be cast down." Right, so people are going to be thrown out as nothing. Just as normal trash you throw in the dumpster, that's how bodies are going to be thrown out. So let's jump down to verse 75. I'll start at verse 71. It says, verse 70, it says, "For there shall be in every place and in the next cities a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord. They shall be like madmen, sparing none, but still spoiling and destroying those that fear the Lord." All right, so persecution. Persecution is going to come for what you believe. It says, "For they shall waste and take away their goods and cast them out of their houses. Then shall they be known who are my chosen, and they shall be tried as the gold in the fire." So when we see these trials really start turn up, okay, when we see famine, we see martial law, we see, chaos, then we're going to know who really are his chosen. Because you're going to be tried like you can't even believe. But guess what? "Hear, O ye my beloved, saith Yahweh, behold, the days of trouble are at hand, but I will deliver you from the same." Okay? "Be not afraid, neither doubt, for Yahweh is your guide, and the guide of them who keep my commandments and precepts, saith the Lord Yahweh. Let not your sins weigh you down, and let not your iniquities lift up themselves." Right? So, don't worry. Okay, don't be afraid, don't doubt, for the Most High is the one that is going to guide us. Okay, He is the one that is guiding us, and He is going to deliver us. Just off this scripture right here, just you knowing this scripture right here, this is all you need to know. That the Most High is going to deliver you from these days of trouble. So, I went into a couple things today, into the prophecies, into what's coming, into, relevant news, the weather, Trump, Minnesota. But the main thing I just want to say is just always remember that Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai is in control. And as it says, He is the guide of them who keep His commandments and precepts. Let not your sins weigh you down, and let not your iniquities lift up themselves. Every single day, destroy that old man, try to become a better person, and just seek the Lord. Seek Him the best you can. So hopefully this was edifying. With that, I give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai Ba'Shem Rakakwadash, and double honors to the elder bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. Shalom to you, like Shalom.